when we started the season, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, they were the favorites to win the Heisman. Well, Quinn Ewers goes down for a couple games, isn't looking that great right now, but Carson Beck's performance hasn't been that great either. So now, out of everyone, he's got the sixth best chance. I believe it's plus 3,500. However, he's really the only SEC contender left to win the Heisman, and I think that's maybe why a lot of people are still trying to push that out there because he's got the best chance of everyone. But really, when you throw 8 interceptions, my opinion is you don't really have a chance anymore. Thoughts?
No, he's thrown 6 interceptions in the last 2 games against ranked opponents for Georgia. He has not been sharp in either of those games. They obviously lost to Alabama. They did not win at Texas because of Beck and his performance that day. If you want to try and push the narrative that he's still in the Heisman race, fine. I guess you have to get your clicks from somewhere. But Carson Beck has not played like one of the best quarterbacks in the country, much less one of the best players. Quite frankly, if I'm handicapping the Heisman right now, it's a 3-person race, maybe 4. If you want to include Dylan Gabriel, I would include Cam Ward in that discussion. And then the 2 front runners right now, Travis Hunter of Colorado and Ashton Jeanty of Boise State.
Would you like to give a prediction, Connor?
As to who wins it? I will take Cam Ward just because he's a quarterback. I don't know that Jeanty is going to get the national pub. And again, he needs to essentially do what Barry Sanders did to get there. And with Travis Hunter, he's missed some time recently, and he's going to need to stay healthy in order to get there. And we'll see if he's ultimately able to do that. So I'll take Cam Ward there because I think he's going to continue to put up numbers and continue to play on a team that is going to make the college football playoff.
I don't need Jeanty to win. I just need him to make it to New York for one of my bold predictions to come true. So I don't really care who wins the Heisman at this point. I'm just rooting for myself. Let's do an injury update. Bye week, had some time to rest, still some questionable things. We can go ahead and say that Joseph Jonah Ajonye, the 5-star defensive lineman, he's going to be out for the rest of the season, but we've got to get some updates. I think the one for me, apart from Tate, who we'll talk about in just a second, the most interesting one to me up at this point has been Jordan Hall. Whenever his injury was announced at the beginning of the season, I don't think any of us realized how far this would play out. He's dressed out in many games, but could this finally be the game where we see him get on the field?
I think it will be. He's been listed as probable. And again, part of this is Georgia, their defensive line, a position we talked about a lot in the offseason, has been a real strength of this team. And so they've been able to bring him along slowly. I think the second bye week helped tremendously. He's been dressing out since that Auburn game. And so maybe in a pinch, they could have used him there. But this defensive line, which was very banged up at the start of the season, has continued to get healthy. And now that they get Jordan Hall back, well, they do lose Joseph Jonah Ajonye for the season. They get another big piece in the middle of that defensive line.
And do we have a status on Tate Ratledge?
Tate Ratledge is currently probable. I would expect him to play. I don't know that he's going to play the full amount of snaps that he normally would. I would expect to see a rotation with Micah Morris and Dylan Fairchild at the guard position. But Tate wants to come back and play in this game. He's an important piece on this Georgia team. And really, I think him coming back could help solve some of the issues on the Georgia offensive line that we've seen thus far.
All right, so for this weekend, we've got some players that are coming home. Carson Beck from Jacksonville, he makes his homecoming return. But perhaps the most fascinating one is Trevor Etienne, who spent 2 years at Florida, then, of course, transfers to Georgia. I think apart from Carson, this is probably the player that cares about this game the most. I think he still has a lot of respect for his former teammates, former coach. If anything, I think maybe the Florida fan base is still a little bit bitter about this just because he did go to their rival school. But, I mean, who can blame him?
Yeah, Trevor Etienne has been Georgia's offensive MVP this season, and you now clearly understand why he made the move that he did. Georgia very much in the college football playoff picture. Florida, even without him and even with the emergence of Jaden Baugh, who had 5 touchdowns against Kentucky, is still not near a college football playoff spot. So I think if you're Florida moving forward, look, you want to play well. You don't want to have Etienne go off against you. And Trevor, I know he has no love lost for his teammates there. He's really looking forward to going out there and playing a big game for Georgia and playing a big role, as he has done every game this season that he's been on the field for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, especially in these, I guess the last couple of games. I feel like we've really seen him come into his own, and I don't expect anything less from him coming back to return to Florida. So, and plus, he has not really failed me that much when we do our touchdown predictions. So, anyway, let's talk about this. So, it's been speculated. I believe Brett McMurphy was the one to announce it on social media that whenever the Jacksonville Stadium goes under renovations, the Georgia-Florida game will be played in Atlanta in 2026 and Tampa in 2027. And believe me when I tell you that there's no person more upset about this than our very own Mike Griffith. But, I mean, it's one of those things I would have loved to have seen a home-and-home series. I think that, you know, Kirby Smart and Billy Napier, whoever the Florida coach would be in the future, would want the same because it's so big for recruiting. But I will say, I do understand from the operational standpoint the revenue that it brings and why that's so much more important now in this era of college football than it once was. So I see both sides on this.
Do you like Georgia winning big-time recruiting battles?
Yeah, of course.
Cool. They're going to get a ton of money from this game, money that they would not make from a home-and-home, and money they would obviously lose when they go on the road. Georgia made $5 million from the Aflac Kickoff Classic this year against Clemson. Georgia Tech is set to get paid $10 million for that 2025 game being played in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Right now, they only make about $1.5 million from the city of Jacksonville. Now, they also get lodging and travel paid for. That number is going to skyrocket in between these Atlanta and Tampa deals, and then obviously in 2028 when it comes back to Jacksonville. I think when the money being what it is and with college football being where it is right now, this is a no-brainer. And while there are people out there that understandably wanted to see the home-and-home, Kirby Smart, I think, chief among them, the money factor has just made this such a non-starter. And that's why you're going to see this game continue to be played at a neutral site for years to come.
Are you good there? Do you need some Billy Napier swamp water?
Nope, I'm all good.
Sure. Okay. Do you think that there comes a point though where Georgia fans are just tired of playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium?
I think it's only a one-year thing. They're going to get a chance to go to Tampa in 2027, it sounds like, and then starting in 2028, they're going to be back in Jacksonville there. So it's a one-year stopover. And look, there are plenty of Georgia fans that love the setup at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's a simple easy in, easy out if you're from the western or maybe perhaps southern part of the state, whereas getting to Athens, I think, can be a little bit trickier. And Georgia, so long as they're not playing in an SEC championship game, has had a ton of success in that building as well.
This is true. Last thing. Do you see what I did here? Complain. Can you give me some credit? Isn't that pretty good?
It's horrible.
On. Seriously, I thought that you, of all people, would enjoy this. Okay, so I'm sure you've seen it by now. If you haven't, Lane Kiffin was basically complaining about the Georgia Ole Miss kickoff time not being at 7:30, not being a night game, specifically because LSU and Alabama got the night game. And here's my take on this before we let Connor have the mic. I totally understand where he's coming from. I totally see his argument. But my takeaway from all this is that's where him and Kirby Smart differ. Because Kirby Smart would have never said anything about this in a press conference, never would have handled it that way. And if there's any one person who should have something to say about this, it's Kirby Smart. They've played 3 away games at night, and not one game in Sanford Stadium has been hosted at nighttime. So I totally get it. I really do. I see the argument. I think that there is some truth to it, but that just shows where the priorities of these two coaches are. I don't want to drop Eddie, but I can't drop the mic. You know,
I would just say go back and watch Kirby Smart, what he said after the Alabama game. I asked him, about being 1-6 and against Alabama, and he, I think to his credit, pointed out that he has not yet played Alabama at home in his tenure. Kirby Smart is not above in press conference settings complaining or at least voicing his frustrations about the schedule setup that comes from the SEC. And look, you can say if you're Lane Kiffin, oh, don't lose to Kentucky there, but again, it's an LSU team and an Alabama team that already have multiple losses, and you understand why ESPN, SEC, ABC, they're all in cahoots on this. But I sympathize with Lane Kiffin. I think this is a game that they had circled that could be a marquee game. They probably have a lot of recruits potentially coming into town for that game, and to sort of have it taken away from you simply because of preconceived notions about LSU, about Alabama. Again, this is an LSU team that needed overtime at home in night to beat this Ole Miss team there. So if that game is, played at a different time of day, maybe this Ole Miss team is actually hosting that night game there. And look, if Georgia doesn't get a chance to host Tennessee at night, if that's not a 7:30 game for whatever reason, now I ultimately do think it will be, I can imagine that Kirby Smart would be maybe a little peeved, at the very least behind closed doors. We'd see if he would say anything public on the matter.
Okay, but wasn't it Kirby Smart that also said that when it came to the recruiting aspect, 3:30, 7:30 didn't change a thing?
That is true. I did ask him that question, but I think that was more of Kirby trying to deflect and not make this news story into anything bigger.
Yeah.
I think that, and look, if it were beneficial to Georgia to complain about it, I do believe that Kirby would do so. I think the fact that they're on the road in this situation impacts the way that he answers that question.
Well, you can't spell complain without Lane. Anyway.
Yes, you can.
Can we just move on really quick before you had something to say? Okay, so in just a little bit, we're going to do our Mount Rushmore of Halloween. We've got to do something fun for Halloween. I mean, it's very on brand for us. But we're going to go ahead and do our meme machine, which is our best college football memes of the week.